Okay, if we turn to page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book, or the first page of text in the white folder, we'll start with Shakyamuni Buddha mantra 3 times. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. And now the Medicine Buddha stanza and the mantra 7 times. Bhagawan with equal compassion for all, whose name, when merely heard, dispels the suffering of the lower realms, dispeller of disease and the 3 poisons, I prostrate to Medicine Buddha, lapis light. I have to remember the tune. To Om, beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Jayata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Jayata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Teata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Teata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Teata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Teata Om beckon say, Maha beckon say, Rata Samud Gate Soha. Now the 4 measurables in English 3 times. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And if we'll turn the page at the bottom of page 37, we'll chant Chenrezig mantra 8 times and the Green Tara mantra 7 times. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Tare Tu Re Soha, 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 Om tare tu re so ha. Om tare tu re so ha. Okay, the children are free to go to their classes.
Let's see. Need a clock. Do we have announcements today? Okay. Yeah, why don't we do announcements now? I think that's always a little anticlimactic at the end. People are running out the door screaming, I don't want to hear any announcements. This way they're stuck here to listen to them.
So, two really short ones. If you are a newcomer here for the first time, we have a newcomer question and answer session afterwards. It'll be here in the Kadampa, and Kim Lillig will lead it. I don't see her in the room yet, but just hang out in the Kadampa. And the other thing is, due to slowness on my part, a really important thing didn't get into this week's bulletin. You'll get it in your this week email. Next Sunday is going to be a really wonderful experience. Geshe Sangpo has just come back from 4 months in India, where he completed the preliminary practice of doing 100,000 prostrations, which is actually 111,000. The extra 11,000 is for errors and omissions. So he's going to have some photos and videos from that experience and talk about what it was like, what the importance is of doing that practice is, and tell us all about his. So it'll be a travelogue with spiritual content. So don't miss it. Thanks.
You want to say something about Jampel's class?
Oh yes. Thank you, Robbie. We have an amazing resource here. Jampel Hilmo, he was in charge of the design and building of the stupa. He did the design and painting on Geshe Gelek's throne. He painted the Tara altar, which is not so visible now that we have Lama Tisha here. There's a large tanka out hanging on just on the other side of this wall here that's mostly pink, that has all these amazing deity images on it. So he has all these skills in Tibetan sacred art, and he's going to be teaching a class on how to draw a tanka. It's very meticulous, and he's going to be teaching that class beginning next Saturday here, I think from 1:30 to 3:30. So if you are interested in taking that class, look for it online and you can register. Oh, and it's four sessions, so 4 2-hour sessions, and how to do this. And really, he's one of like 4 or 5 people in the world who has his skill set. So normally you'd have to go across the country or on the other side of the world to have an opportunity to study with somebody of his caliber. So do take advantage of it if you're interested. Thanks.
Yeah, Lama Zopa, our spiritual director, has said, he's one of the really outstanding traditional Tibetan artists working today. So this is a very special opportunity. Jill, you have any announcements?
I'm giving everybody a break.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to Kadampa Center's Easter and April Fool's Day celebration, in honor of which I'm here as a replacement for Geshe Gelek. Geshe Gelek, our regular teacher, one of our 2 resident teachers. We're very fortunate to have 2 extremely qualified Tibetan monks, Geshe Gelek and Geshe Sangpo, as resident teachers here at Kadampa Center. That's very unusual to have 2 qualified teachers like that at one center. So that's something that we should always be thankful for. but Geshe Gelek does travel. He's always getting invitations from around the world to come to other FPMT centers, centers that are members of the worldwide organization that we're part of. So he is currently off in Argentina/Patagonia, yes. He has some very devoted students down there, so he's visiting with them. So we're having substitute teachers during his absence. I'm Robbie Watkins. I've been a member of the center for over 20 years, and I'm one of the leaders for the Discovering Buddhism classes that we've been offering. And every so often, Donna asked me to sit up here and fill in. So I am leading the discussion this morning, and it's very much a discussion. If there's no discussion, I will finish up quite early. Let me just get an idea who's here. Who's here for the very first time today? Okay, it's interesting. It's Easter, and most of our regular people are not here, but we have a lot of new people coming in, so we're very glad to have you here. And please feel free to look around and ask questions after the session. And here, we're glad to have you here. We didn't have many children here either this morning. Everybody's taking a vacation, I think. Yeah, hunting Easter eggs, yeah. Okay. So let's begin with some meditation. Yeah, thank you. That would be nice. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if you're new to Buddhism or meditation, there's nothing mystical or weird about it. It's just becoming familiar with your own mind and looking at what's going on in the mind, and look at the mind's ability to think and concentrate and imagine. Today we're just going to do a very simple concentration meditation where we place our concentration on the breath. Nothing more, nothing less than that. And so we begin by checking our posture, and whether we're sitting on the floor or in a chair, the first thing is to have a nice straight back. Not rigid, but a little straighter than we normally sit. Our head may be just a couple degrees in front of the vertical, but not tilted to one side or the other. Our eyes can either be just slightly open, letting in a little bit of light, but not focusing on any object, or lightly closed. Our jaw is lightly closed, not clenched. Our tongue against the roof of our mouth, so we don't drool while we're meditating. That's considered bad form. Our shoulders are down, not up around our ears, but down and relaxed, and a little bit back, so our chest is a little open. Upper arms are away from the sides of our torso. And we can either place one hand on each knee, or more traditionally in this tradition, that's a good phrase, traditionally in this tradition, yeah. The traditional way in this tradition is to put our right hand on left, with our thumbs touching slightly below our navel. Represents the union of wisdom and compassion. That is enlightenment, the state we aspire to. And our legs are in any position that we find comfortable, crossed if we're sitting on the floor, our feet flat on the floor if we're sitting in a chair. It's fine to put a cushion under your feet. And begin by taking 3 deep breaths from your abdomen, the stomach expanding on the in-breath, and contracting towards your spine on the out-breath. So a little bit different from the way we normally breathe. And now we allow our breathing to return to its normal pattern. And as we always do, we begin by setting our motivation for the meditation that's to follow, and for the discussion, and for being here in general this morning. And any motivation is fine. If we're just here out of curiosity, that's great. If we're interested in calming our mind a little bit, that's fantastic. But it's said that the highest motivation, the most beneficial motivation, is what we refer to as the bodhicitta motivation. The thought that everything I do, even just coming to Kadampa Center and sitting quietly for a few minutes and engaging in the discussion, is done to transform my mind so that I can be of greater benefit for all sentient beings, myself included. But that's completely inclusive. Myself, my family, my friends, my coworkers, the people I don't like, the people I don't even know, so that I can be of benefit to all of those people without exception. So that's not a way we normally think. Most of us have to generate that motivation with a little bit of effort. But that's fine. So just think along those lines for a moment. And now, having set our motivation, we begin the actual meditation. And this is just a simple concentration meditation. Simple, but not necessarily easy. We place our consciousness, our awareness, our thought on the physical sensation of the breath moving in and out through our nostrils. Nothing more, nothing less than that. Direct perception of the movement of the breath. As much as possible, we're not describing it to ourselves. We're not visualizing it. In this meditation, we're not even going to count the breath. Just mind directly on the breath, so that they become, in essence, one. Direct perception of the breath. as it is inevitable, we notice that our mind has wandered off to another object, thinking of a memory, an emotion, a plan of something we need to do today. We just gently set that aside and bring our mind back to the breath. Not judging ourselves, not criticizing, but just coming back over and over to the breath. And that's the meditation, the process of coming back over and over to the breath. And now, as always, we end our meditation with a dedication. We give ourselves a little pat on the back, acknowledge we've done something a little bit out of the ordinary, something that, as simple as it seemed, and we may have found it frustrating or boring, but we've still made a small positive imprint on our mind stream. And we think, may that energy that we've created not be wasted, but may it ripen in the future in a way that benefits all sentient beings. So just think along those lines for a moment. Okay. Since we have so many new people here this morning, if everybody could just take a couple minutes and introduce yourself to the people you don't know. It's fine to get up and move around and stretch. Okay. Okay, let's come back. In your seat, children. Okay. And with that, I will turn the cushion over to today's guest teacher, Mr. Peter Murphy.
Now I'm heckling you.
April Fools.
Very short.
Yeah. Well, if there's no discussion, this will be a very short lesson, yeah. There was no assigned topic for me to lead the discussion on this morning, and so I was trying to think what to talk about. And I was thinking, I was looking around. It's so beautiful. This is spring. The flowers are sprung, and it's gorgeous outside. And I know everybody wants to get outside. And this is also Easter, which is the day that Christians celebrate Christ's resurrection. So it seems to make sense that we could have a little talk about rebirth and reincarnation. That's something that Geshe does not teach on that on Sunday mornings. He does teach about it on Wednesday evenings, and we talk about it a lot in Discovering Buddhism, which is our Monday evening class, the introduction to basics of Buddhism. But it's something that I think there's a lot of misconception about and a lot of misunderstanding. And people have different ideas about it, whether it's true or not, whether it's reality. So I thought it'd be an interesting subject to discuss this morning. Just a couple, I'm just going to say a couple things, and I have maybe some readings from His Holiness the Dalai Lama that may come in useful. The idea of rebirth, which is the word we prefer to use, though reincarnation is used quite a bit also, is not unique to Buddhism. It's certainly found in a lot of other religions. It's not something that the Buddha invented. It was something that he accepted as reality and something that he saw as reality, but it's not a uniquely Buddhist concept. There's no requirement to believe in rebirth or reincarnation to consider yourself a Buddhist, as there's no requirement to accept any of the teachings of the Buddha. The idea that the Buddha always said is to check it against your own experience, see if it seems to be true, and just as importantly, see if it seems to be useful to you. But I was just saying, I think just about every religious tradition posits that there's something after this life, I think. Is there any religion that says when we die physically that that's the end, that nothing continues? I don't know. I'm not a study of comparative theology. Anybody have any insight into that? What do Jews believe happens at the moment of death? Does anybody know that? Does anybody have any insight into that? Yeah, okay. Microphone, yeah. This is being streamed around the world, and there are thousands of people listening to every word, yeah. Actually, sometimes I look at the count, and there are 3 or 4 people listening in. Yeah.
You asked if there's any religion that does not believe in life after death. It depends on whether you consider humanism to be a religion.
Yeah, okay, certainly, yeah. Mm-hmm. But the humanist point of view would be that there is nothing. Is that correct? That's the end, okay. Does anybody know what the Jewish religion believes happens at the... yeah, okay. Susan, you want to give it? Yeah. Educate me.
As I understand it, in the Jewish tradition, there is a heaven or a hell.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in the Talmud they talk about Gehenna, which is considered to be hell, but there's not much emphasis on it. There's really, in Judaism, there's a focus on how to conduct yourself in this life, and it's not, even though there's a reference to the next life, mostly it's there's a focus on, okay, how do you lead a good life here and now?
Yeah.
So there's not much conversation about it.
Yeah. I've heard it said that for Jews, you live on in the memory of people who are still living. That's really the way the afterlife is. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see, back there, yeah. Which is a beautiful idea.
In Japan, the native religion Shinto is more of a celebration of life. They do have realms of death, but there isn't really much of a thought process that you continue into them or there's any continuation of your soul, which is why when Buddhism was brought to Japan, the Japanese started to use Buddhism to conduct their funeral rites and have that
Mhm.
reincarnation belief assimilated into it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. And who can summarize the Christian point of view? What is it that, from a Christian point, somebody who's more knowledgeable about Christianity, what happens at what exactly is death, and then what continues on after death from the Orthodox Christian point of view? Jill, you were going to talk? Or,
Well, they don't talk about the actual death like we do, so there's no
okay.
that I remember of anything in that theology. But it's when you die, then that's when the judgment takes place of whatever you want to call that. So then you are assessed, and then you either go to heaven or hell.
Does that happen right away when you die?
There's
Is
not a real-
anybody?
In Catholicism, it's purgatory, but not Lutherans don't have a purgatory. We skip that step. We don't have a lot of intercession. We go straight
And
to
Episcopalians go to a cocktail party. A big cocktail party in the sky. I was raised Episcopalian, so I can say that.
An interesting point in my catechism class in 8th grade, which is a little different than Catholicism too, is the minister brought up something that I found fascinating. It may be my entry point into Buddhism back then, but eternity is now.
Mm-hmm.
So he said it's like time doesn't, God doesn't have a time like we have a clock. So when you die, you're dying at the same time everybody's dying. And it's not like they've been in heaven waiting for you for your whole life. This could be one minister's crazy talk, but it's that it's all, there's not time, it doesn't really relate to, this is a construct that we've created. So if you think about it, we're all entering it at the same time, so it's not like Adam and Eve are waiting for us, which can be difficult if people are Christian and think their families are waiting for them. It's happening all at one time, and the judgment, that's why the judgment is at one time. So there's a interesting construct.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? Yeah, Donna.
I'll just, because you also asked the question, what continues
Mm-hmm.
in Christianity? And so each of us is an individual, is a soul. That's the identity of that individual person. So after death, who Heather is, would continue. Jill would continue. Robbie would continue. Peter would continue. Anna would continue. And as Jill was referring to, you'd meet your family, the people that you knew, and it would be that person that you knew.
Mm-hmm. But it is that personality that continues?
Yeah.
I mean, the soul carries the personality of that individual
Yeah.
person? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you would know everything. Is that part of Catholicism too? You would have that awareness of all, like you would be
Well, yeah. I guess you'd know everything. All the things that are all the things we don't know now would be answered. Yes.
Yeah, you have a sense of that all the questions will be answered.
Yeah.
So you'll just have, and that's like an awareness too, right? You'll just be awakened into that. They wouldn't use the word awaken.
Okay. Up here. Okay, I'm learning. Keep going.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about this. I don't know if it's considered religion, but it's very popular in Brazil, where I'm from. It calls Candomblé, which is it comes from Africa, and they have gods and goddess that's related to the nature. So they have the goddess of the forest, of the ocean, Iemanjá. She's the goddess of the ocean. So when you follow, so you almost like turn into a piece of nature once you die. You are part of. If that goddess is your guide. Supposedly, everybody born with a guidance, like a guide or a god that protects you, almost like the Taras, but that one is like specific when you're born. So then, when you pass away, you kind of turn into part of her soul. Your soul becomes like the forest or the river or something like that. There's Ogun, Oshun. It's very interesting. So
Okay. So just about, so there are all sorts of
Candomblé.
beliefs. Yeah.
But in Christianity also. I mean, I was brought up Russian Greek Orthodox,
it's belief that you die. I mean, I think most Christians, and you just immediately go up to heaven, and so no karma there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Okay.
For some reason that you're
yeah.
a good person or whatever, you don't need to
Okay.
purify yourself.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Susie? Or you just holding mic? Okay. Okay. Ignore her. Yeah, she's she's just holding the mic. Yeah. So there are also all sorts of belief systems, and does anybody know the poem "The Dream of Gerontius" by Cardinal Newman? I was for some reason I was reading that the other day. He was a Catholic cardinal in the 19th century, and it's about you have an angel who's watching over you your entire life and trying to lead you to God. I was reading that in preparation for Easter or for something else, but anyway, lots of ideas. I think Buddhism, as much as, if not more than any other religion, talks about death a lot and is very specific about what happens at the death process and what happens afterwards. And that's one of the things that gives Buddhism the reputation of being a very gloomy religion, which I think is not accurate, but we do sit around and talk about death a lot. So can someone, for all the newcomers here, give us the Buddhist party line on what happens at death and what happens afterwards? Someone wanted to lead that discussion. Peter, you can do this. Yeah.
I was just going to say, what I understand, what came to mind was the indestructible drop and what you carry.
Oh, yeah, you're getting way ahead of us. Yeah, but
well,
yeah.
Sorry. And what you carry with you at death is basically your merit, and that's really what propels you into your next, through the Bardo into your next rebirth.
Yeah.
And of course, they talk about how important it is your state of mind at the time of death and how that can impact your. I don't know if it's the throwing karma or whatever, but it's basically your karma. And then I've heard people say that if you want to know, people worry about, what was I in my previous life? They said, look at, how your mind is now. Mm-hmm. And then, that's how you can kind of, so it's all about our actions of body, speech, and mind, and that's really going to determine what happens next.
Yeah.
And what I like about it is it's a continuum, so it's not really it is kind of the end of this, particular role, but you do kind of continue. I won't say you, but you're, I guess. So.
Yeah. Okay.
How's that?
Yeah. You covered a lot there.
Was that doctrinally
You want to come
correct?
sit up here?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Just to elaborate on what Peter said, the Buddhist point of view is that we're made up of a mind and a body. The body is the physical aspect of our being. The mind is the non-physical aspect. And we can use mind, consciousness, awareness as similar. And at the time of death, the physical body and the mind, the non-physical mind, separate. Okay, that's what death is. It's a separation of the mind from the body. The physical body falls apart, decays. Okay, the mind continues on. In the Buddhist point of view, and I'm just giving you the party line, I can't prove this, the mind is without beginning and without end. Okay, that you cannot find a first moment of mind, you can't find a last moment. It continues from lifetime to lifetime. And what continues is the non-physical mind, and it sheds our personality. Robbie Watkins, as he exists, does not go forward. Okay, it says Peter talked about a very subtle level of consciousness that continues, that carries the imprints of everything that we've said, everything that we've thought, everything that we've done in the past, both of this lifetime and previous lifetimes. Those are the karmic imprints that are carried on that subtle consciousness. And based on that karma, the consciousness joins with another body and is reborn in a new lifetime. Okay, so there's an endless series of body and mind joining together, coming apart, joining together, coming apart. Always, impermanent. None of that is permanent. It's always changing. And the karmic imprints are what determines the next rebirth or reincarnation, if we want to use that word. And to a certain degree, we don't have any control over it, for most of us. Now, if we become a Buddha, which is a possibility for all of us, which means a state of complete compassion and complete wisdom, it's just a mental state that we can develop, then we can choose. We have control over our next rebirth. But for most of us, we have no control over it. Okay, it's what's referred to as samsara, the uncontrolled cycle of being born, getting old, dying, being reborn again based on karma. Okay, for everybody in this room, we had the good karma to be reborn as a human being this go round. But in previous lifetimes, we've all been every possible incarnation of body and mind. We've been insects, we've been, in other realms according to the teachings of the Buddha. But in this lifetime, we're a human being, which means we have a human mind and a human body, and that's considered very favorable for developing our good qualities. So it's something not to be wasted, according to the Buddha. OTB, as we say. ATB, yes. That's an abbreviation for according to the Buddha. Okay, we're just going to take a poll. How many people absolutely believe in rebirth? No doubts. Whoa, lots, okay. How many people absolutely do not believe in it? Okay. And how many people are undecided in between? Okay. I'll throw it open for discussion. What are some good reasons to believe in rebirth? Since a lot of people. Okay. We'll get to everybody. Yeah. Let's start here. Why I believe in rebirth.
From what I've heard from quantum physics and the theories of matter and energy that can't be created or destroyed, that really comforts me in the transferring of our bodies and energy in that way into rebirth. Okay, so you find it hard to accept the idea that mental energy would just cease to exist. Yeah, absolutely, is what you're saying. Yeah, that's a very Buddhist point of view, that one moment of mind always leads to another moment of mind. You can't have a thought not followed by another thought. That's inconceivable for that conceptual power to go out of existence. Susie's going to talk now. She's not just a mic holder. Okay? Thank you.
Got a perk. I like to think of rebirth because there are people who are so unfortunate in this life, and I don't understand why I'm not them. Mm-hmm. And so I have been them, and I will be them again. So it helps my sense of fairness. Also, Robbie, you didn't mention purification, so it's not like you're just on this roller coaster hoping for something to come up good. Mm-hmm. There are times I've heard, if I'm correct, where you can erase negative karma. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And help yourself.
Yeah, or at least weaken it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Other arguments for rebirth right now? That's what
we're speaking about Christianity, and I don't want to pick on. I don't want to pick on Christians, certainly, but the idea of reincarnation kind of solves the intellectual problem of why there is evil in the world or why bad things happen to good people. Yeah. The reason bad things happen to good people is because at some point in time in your previous lives, we've done bad things, and so something bad happens. That's karma and reincarnation kind of go hand in hand. We have this accumulated amount of good and bad things that are destined to happen to us based on what we've done, and reincarnation allows us to get those good and bad reactions. And so when you see an innocent child and something terrible, oh, they jumped on the trampoline and they broke their leg, they're so nice, why did this happen to them? Well, in the past they did something bad, and now they have to suffer a certain amount of anxiety for what they've done.
Yeah. And even if you can't find it in this lifetime, you can assume it's in some previous lifetime. Yeah. Yeah. Karma and rebirth are very closely connected. Yeah. I mean, I think you can believe in karma without rebirth, but it's much more powerful if there's an understanding of rebirth.
I was just going to say, I agree with what they said, but things just don't make a whole, now that I've been studying for a while, things don't make a whole lot of sense to me in life without karma. I mean, so how do you explain, I mean, we all know there's cause and effect in the physical world, right? Sir Isaac Newton. So, I think you can see the karmic effects in your life if we pay attention to it. I think you can kind of see that. We also see things that we don't understand why. I don't think I actually created the karma for that. Why did that happen? So that kind of, for me, reinforces the whole idea of a continuum, the rebirth of, and I think the whole thing about purification is really pretty amazing, because it's all about changing your mind. And every, as we progress, there's all these imprints, that we're creating, and so I think that changing that is an important part of the purification process. But I was listening to Stephen Batchelor speak, because he's kind of debunks the whole idea of karma, and I just thought, not to criticize him, but I thought his explanation was just totally empty. I mean, because how can there not be cause and effect? And you cannot explain everything. And then because even in Christian theology, they say, well, why would God, if there is a God, why would God allow the Holocaust? Okay, yeah, so right, because in a lot of the horror and all the things that go on in the world. So anyway, that I think that can be a very transformative thing for people's lives too, if you really can develop a realization around all that you think, say, and do has an effect. So.
Yeah. Okay. Other pro rebirth arguments? Thank you, Peter.
For me, a belief in karma is motivation to be positive in this life and to do no harm. If something comes up and you could be snarky or something, if you think about what are you creating, and you pull back and you want to be a positive imprint on yourself and on others.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Let's go to Chris, and then up here.
The way that I believe in reincarnation is, it kind of goes along with that quantum physics explanation earlier, is that for a moment of consciousness, you need a previous moment of consciousness, and you can trace that all the way back to when you were born, and then your consciousness had to exist before that point.
Yeah, that's a great meditation to do, just tracing your train of thought back as far as you can go, seeing how every thought came from a previous thought, And ATB, there always had to be a previous thought. Consciousness being completely non-physical could not come from a physical source. I.e., when the egg and the sperm unite, the consciousness enters there. The egg and the sperm, being physical, don't create the consciousness. Okay? The Buddha said consciousness always comes from a previous moment of consciousness. Okay, up here. And then we'll switch to the naysayers shortly.
There's a fascinating and hilarious book written by a woman named Mary Roach, and it's called Spook, And what she does is she takes it's scientific, but at the same time it's very light and readable approach to exploring the life after death question through various religions. And she interviews a bunch of different people. She talks to John Edwards, the psychic, all kinds of different things.
Not John Edwards, the senator.
Not John, no.
Is there political life after political death? Yeah.
But for anyone who's interested in reading a little bit more about the investigation behind the phenomenon, she does a really good job of comparatively writing about that. And again, the book is called Spook, and her name is Mary Roach.
Okay, thank you. That sounds very interesting. Yeah. Let's see. We're still on pro-rebirth, okay? Yeah. Then we'll give the opposing team a chance.
For many years, for I guess most of my life, until I met Annie, I couldn't even see what is the point of this rebirth idea. Like, how does it even make any sense at all? Isn't it sort of a waste of time to be thinking of your next life or past lives? How about just devoting yourself to being a good person in this life? That's a big job itself. But for the last few years, I've shifted because this whole rebirth idea, for me, opens up a horizon that wasn't there before. Because when I think about my life, if I think, well, it just ends, whenever it ends, it's extremely limited experience. I have a few children, I have these few experiences, and then, boom, it's all over. And well, what was that all about? It's a pretty limited thing. But when I think, well, my past life, maybe I was an animal like that cow over there, or this mosquito, or I could have been this person who I hate, or some other being who's my mother or my father. It opens me up to this sense of connection with all beings in the world or the universe, and that's a way bigger thing to consider, and opens my heart to feeling a connection to all living beings. For me, this is a very spiritual, open-hearted way of being that otherwise I just feel very limited and just isolated. But then when I think, well, reincarnation opens me up to a much bigger sense of connection to the universe, which I feel more deeply moved by.
Okay, thank you. Before we switch to the naysayers, just one reason that nobody brought up, and this is something that I've developed over time, and it may not mean anything to some of you, but because my teachers say it's true. And these are teachers who I've found to be completely reliable and everything else. And by teachers, I mean Geshe Gelek, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And that's not enough to say I absolutely believe in it, but that's a convincing supporting argument for me. And I think a lot of other people who have studied with these people would say the same. Okay, let's see. Peter's about to pop here with just one.
I got one little comment.
Okay, and then we'll go.
Just a quick comment. It is interesting that there are stories of really compelling stories out of India and also out of Lebanon and other parts of the world, and even within the Christian community in Lebanon, of children saying, at a very young age, having knowledge of something and saying, there's a great story I heard, and it happened in India, and this little girl says, I want to go to this village, my family's there. So they finally took her there, and she had them, I guess, dig into the plaster wall or whatever, and there were 5,000 rupees in the wall that she had saved.
24 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Goes a long way in India, not so much at Whole Foods, but this stuff is very well documented, very well. So.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot. Okay, now we're going to go to the team B, the naysayers, people who reject. And
well, representing the humanist point of view, I would rather not try to prove that there's no rebirth, or to try to convince anyone here that there's no life after death. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I believe that Buddhist practice and Buddhist ethics are very valuable things, no matter what you believe about the nature of the universe. I'll just say that for the humanist, the belief that death is final simply intensifies the sense of the importance of this life. This is our one chance to get it right.
Okay, thank you. So you're not absolutely, you're not absolutely rejecting it. You're saying it's not really relevant or not that important.
I am absolutely rejecting it,
okay.
But I'm not going to make the argument for it right now. It's not so important that it should prevent people from benefiting from the great tradition of Buddhism.
Okay.
I think a belief in rebirth is what I absolutely reject. For the Buddha, it was an awareness of reality that he did. So what I'd like to talk about is how a belief in rebirth might actually impede one's path. There's a Zen Buddhist story. So this is a Buddhist perspective, because there are Buddhist schools that don't teach about the soul going through this rebirth process. And it's a Zen koan, and there's this one Buddhist Zen monk who's dying, and another Zen monk comes up to him to try to comfort him, because he's having a hard time of dying. And the dying monk says, "Leave me alone. I was born alone into this life, and I'm going to die alone. There's nothing you can do to help me." And the younger Zen monk says, "If you believe that there's anyone coming or going, then that is your folly." And the Zen monk dies and goes right away in Shiva's enlightenment. So for me, it's not so much, I'm kind of like on that page, if it's not so much it's pointless to argue about its existence or not, but to firmly stake your belief in it almost reinforces the illusion
okay.
that we are trying to liberate ourselves from.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? How about someone who doesn't know or is in between? Maybe, maybe not. Anybody want to express that point of view? Yeah.
So I'm kind of on the fence. Not sure. I haven't really considered it deeply. This is only my second time here. Everything's still very new. But one of the things that I think in some ways makes me have this gut reaction that makes me very uncomfortable listening to this is the idea that I would look at somebody less fortunate and that there would be does that, I guess in my mind, if I look at someone less fortunate and say, oh, this is because in the past they must have done these things, does that reduce my empathy for them? Does that say, okay, does that make me more, less likely to fight for them or less likely to sort of say, okay, so it's my job to fight for them? And I'm sure that that's not the case, but that's the gut reaction, sort of like what I'm feeling when I hear these things. It's like, oh gosh, that makes me feel like I'm almost, instead of feeling more connected to them, almost othering them. And so that's, I guess, what I've been sitting here listening to and grappling with. It's like, okay, where does that fit? How does this fit in line with things?
Somebody want to address that?
Hello.
Yeah.
So in hearing, I was in the no camp.
But
there wasn't many of us, so I figured I could talk in the maybe camp too. But in you saying that, I think that is one of the things that I think of too, in that you had, Peter had brought up the Holocaust, and so then the assumption would be that everyone who was tortured and killed and murdered in the Holocaust to some extent deserved it because they had done something wrong in a prior life. And I think it takes away a certain level of responsibility to change systematic oppressions in our society. In my day job, I work with people who are being evicted from their homes because they can't afford their rent. And a lot of people blame themselves for it. But it's also a system that's created for people to profit off of homes and raise the rent really high so that poor people can't afford it and then they're evicted. But if you believe that if they had believe, as many of them do, that they deserve it because they had done something wrong, then there's no reason to try to change the system that made them homeless. And then in addition to that, I would just also say, well, I mean, I'm an atheist, so, and I'm just here visiting my best friend, and she wanted to come. But I've, my mom was a Buddhist, and I have always enjoyed Buddhism. But I would also say that one of the reasons why I would be in the no camp is because I think a lot of the explanations given for why you might believe in rebirth are very comforting, and very beautiful thoughts, but that doesn't make it true, because you find comfort in it, that doesn't make it necessarily true. Right. In the same way that one would find comfort in going to heaven, and then my other final thought that I'll make is that I'm no scientist, but I feel like, with the exception of humans, most living beings can't really make decisions that would be a moral decision. So like if we were, because you had said earlier that human beings are kind of like, this is like, you've done something good. But like, so if you were a cow before, like, what did you do right as a cow to make you become a human? Or like, what did you do wrong as a bird? I mean, I don't know if that's just like a complete ignorance of Buddhism. And
no.
Like, so this like idea of like these past lives that weren't human, like, how are you making decisions when like all you really know is to eat grass that would like lead to a better next life, is my other sort of issue with it.
Yeah, all good points. Yeah. Anybody want to address those?
I really want to address the whole, because that was a pretty heavy, for somebody that hasn't been here.
You bring up the Holocaust. That's
I know that was. I didn't mean to throw down something so heavy, but I definitely, the whole thing around deserving or non-deserving is I really feel like a Western thing and a guilt thing that's we kind of project. When I talk to Geshe, and I'm telling him about something that's really painful or that's going on in my life, and he's like, you really need to look at this as bad karma, because I'm struggling in not creating more bad karma. He said, see this as bad karma being exhausted. And I'm in a situation where I'm like, if this happens, I win. If this happens, I lose. He goes, no, that's not, you got it completely wrong there. This is all part of your karma. And I think, as far as like when you think about the things, whether it's having a life as a cow, and karma is certainly very complicated. And if you don't have, for people like His Holiness Dalai Lama, they're in another level in terms of their understanding of karma, I think. But I think you can kind of look at the things that happen in your life, and I can look at my life and go, wow, I am so fortunate, but how in the heck did this disaster happen in my life? This really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it is, we constantly have good and bad karma happening. It's, it comes in, it goes out. The causes and conditions are constantly changing. And so I think, but I definitely want to say that I don't think anybody deserves anything. And I think that's also a great reason to have compassion on yourself is, when you have bad karma ripening, it's a great opportunity to kind of look at yourself and look at, it's a motivator to go, how can I, change to avoid this karma in the future? And it's a real motivator. If you look at it like, well, bad, somebody just did something bad to me, it's more likely to go, well, I'm going to get that person. That's kind of the normal kind of human reaction. So,
yeah, you made a good point there right at the beginning. I'll just, but at the end, it got better, Peter. Yeah, it got better. ATB, according to the Buddha, if we truly understand how through our karma, we have created the causes for our own suffering. Maybe not in this lifetime, but we've created the causes in the past. We see that in our own life, and then we see it in others, that their suffering is not random, but they have actually created the causes for it. That makes us more compassionate. we're not judging them, but we're saying, you did the same stuff I've done, okay? And the fact that we are causing our own problems is actually, the Buddha says that's incredibly painful to realize, both for ourselves and others. But as Peter said, we tend to fall over into judgment. Oh, you did that to yourself, so I'm not sorry for you. The actual way the Buddha felt is that made him even more compassionate. When you see how people are doing this over and over again. A lot of discussion we could continue with, but I want to end with a little bit of meditation, okay? So if we can, sorry to cut anybody off, I appreciate everybody's participation, but it's always good to quiet our minds a little bit. So again, let's just get into our meditation posture. 3 deep breaths to settle our mind. And set our motivation again. As much as possible, generate the bodhicitta motivation. And having set our motivation, we'll just pay attention to our breath for a moment to quiet our mind. And now we'll do just a couple minutes of analytic meditation, using our mind's ability to think, reason, analyze, and just review some of the comments that have been made here today. And if there's one that particularly hits you, that you found particularly striking, think about that and judge it against your own experience, which the Buddha said we always have to do. Everything is judged against our experience. Does this seem true to me? Do I find this helpful? Or is it a distraction? So again, just review some of the comments that have been made. And now we'll do our dedication verses.
So we'll turn to page 246 in the Gold Prayer Book. And we'll say the dedication from Shantideva. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Okay, so thank you for the discussion, everyone. Just a reminder, next week we'll see Geshe Sangpo, who we haven't seen for a while, will be here telling us how to do 100,000 prostrations. Yeah, and have a great day. Okay, great Easter. Yeah.